Well, hey, Henderson County beekeepers. It has been a while. My name is Janelle Cole, and I was sitting outside looking at what's blooming, thinking that I haven't done a video for you guys in a while, so I thought that I would get on here and talk about some of the things that are blooming in my backyard. So I always find it interesting to find good bee plants that are in particular blooming off season. So we've got plenty of things that bloom in the spring and the summer here in Texas, but I like to find plants that are blooming later in the year. So, I mean, we're not real late, it's September, but, and some of these things have been blooming for a while, but I was just gonna show you a few of the plants that are blooming around my place. In particular, I was going to talk to you about the Vitex or the Chaste, but let's see. So here's a flower bed I have. There's a lot of things blooming. The bees are not gonna work the Turk's cap. The flower is too deep for them to work, but the hummingbirds and the butterflies will work it. I don't really know what this is. I've got to figure it out because, yeah, I've got a lot of it. But I have seen pollinators around these blooms, and as you can imagine, they were growing all summer, and then they just started blooming probably in mid-August. So late blooming, prolific blooming, but gosh, I waited all summer to figure out what it was, and I don't know if it was worth it. So there is proof that the pollinators like it. There's a bumblebee working the bloom. He's trying to hide from you guys, but anyway, there he is. And I hear other buzzing creatures. So I don't know what this is. I'll try to figure it out and let y'all know, but I don't know if I'd recommend it. I don't think I'm gonna let it grow next year. It's just ugly. Like, it's pretty right now, but it's been ugly all year. So on the other hand, this is Boneset. And it also, oh, look at that. There's a little bee in there. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little bee on the leaf. It doesn't look like a real happy bee, but yeah, we've got lots of bees over here because the extractor's right there, and we extracted honey yesterday. So my husband is letting them clean it all up, which can be a bit of a mess, but whatever. Okay, we have Croton. Croton is not here by design. It just popped up and we haven't pulled it. But the other stuff, this Boneset, I love it, and the bees are working it. Now, they're not working it more than the extractor right now, but if the extractor wasn't here, you'd see them working it. There's a wasp working it. So this is considered a weed. It's also very medicinal. I used it about a month ago and had huge results. So this is something that we had a little bit of last year, and you can see, I mean, we have a lot of it this year, and we'll have even more next year. I would be thrilled if all of this was Boneset, because the Boneset's not quite as long and gangly all summer long. It's not ugly. It's just okay. It's just a green plant. But that yellow flowery thing, it was just tall and gangly. So anyway, so those are two that are in bloom in my backyard. Something else that's blooming right now, well, the crepe myrtles are still blooming. We've got a white one right here behind me. So it's got a few blooms on it. We've got some purple ones and pink ones out front that are still blooming. But generally the bees aren't real crazy about the crepe myrtles. Primarily, I think it's that they don't have pollen. I think that's correct. They don't have pollen, and so they don't work them for that reason. But now my Vitex tree is ugly. I will tell you, it needs some love, and I'm probably gonna spend some time on it this fall. It's not shaped or anything like that, but what I just noticed as I came out here, so this bloomed in, I don't know, maybe June. And again, you know, we have so much to do in so little time these days, even with everything going on. If I had come out here and clipped all these back, this would be all in bloom right now. But instead, we just have a few blooms. But that's one of the reasons why I love this Vitex tree. It's also called Texas lilac. It's called a chaste tree. Again, the bees aren't working it, probably because there's not very many blooms. There's a few, but you can see, if you can see those seeds, all these are the seeds. That was all in bloom earlier this year. So it was full of blooms earlier this year, and it's a very preferred bee plant. So if you get a chance, to get a Vitex. I highly recommend it. You can shape this up to be really pretty. If I cut everything down here, it would look more like a tree. It can be a shrub. We could cut the top and shape it and make it more of a square shrub. I don't know. I'm more of like let it look natural, but you can see like there's some branches under there that just need to be clipped back and trimmed up, and it would be really pretty. But either way, ugly, pretty, it doesn't really matter to me because the bees don't care and the bees really like it. So Vitex tree, that one's probably been in 4 or 5 years. So, you know, it's had a few years to get established. So, all right, then I wanted to see if you guys are taking care of your bees, what you're doing, kind of remind you of what you should be doing. I'm going to go back over here because it's pretty bright in the sun. Okay, so like I said, we extracted honey last night. We are wrapping up our honey extraction. So that doesn't mean everybody is. It just means we are, and I'll tell you why. So we like to treat for mites as soon as we extract all the honey. And if you know much about us, you know we're running about 5 bee yards right now. And so it just takes a while. So we need to basically get different yards done so that we can get all the honey out, and then we can go in and treat for mites. So most of our mite treatments have a temperature threshold, so you can't use them in like the 100-degree temperatures. And then some of them have just other requirements, and so what we are using you can't have honey on for, and so we're just pulling all of our honey, extracting everything. We know that it's still early. Somebody was asking me 2 days ago if we need to get all the honey pulled, and I would say my opinion is no. When you see the goldenrod blooming, that is typically when you want to be done extracting, because you don't want to pull goldenrod honey. And as much as I've driven around this week, I have not really seen goldenrod blooming yet. So that would tell me that if you don't want to extract yet, you don't have to extract yet. You can wait a little while and extract when it's convenient. But you definitely want to get in and start planning that. Start figuring out when you're going to extract. So yeah, honey extraction. It's about that time. Then that was leading me into the next part, which is treating for mites. So we know lots of people who say they don't treat for mites, and that is everybody's personal opinion, right? Like you can do what you want. If you don't want to treat for mites, you don't have to. But we will tell you our personal experience, and Robert has talked about it. He's shown diagrams. So the growth of the bees starts in the spring, and they really are at full strength in the hive, as far as numbers are concerned, in like May and June, okay? Well, the mites, they explode afterwards, 30 to 60 days after. And guess what? That's where we are. So our mite counts are really at their highest right now. And the brood is on the downward slope, okay? So the queen has slowed down laying. You may still have full hives, and I hope you do. But she's not laying at the same rate that she was before. So that means that if the mite count has gone up and the bee count is starting to go down, the mite count can become overwhelming to the bees and then cause fatal damage to a colony. I'm not saying to bees, but to an entire colony. So we do treat. We treat every hive in the fall for mites. Okay, so we have found that that is successful for us. So we recommend everybody that takes our class and everybody in Henderson County Beekeepers that you treat for mites. Now, there are people that get into this and say, nope, I'm just gonna let them be natural. And that's fine. You can. It's a very expensive exercise. So we know lots of people, to include ourselves, that have tried that and have had devastating losses because of that. So the mites are a real thing. The chances of you having a hive that does not have mite problems is very, very low. Just because you're not seeing some things doesn't mean that they don't exist. It's really important that we do mite counts. If you think, you know what, my hives are strong and I'm not worried about mites, go do a mite count. That's what I would recommend, and see how many mites you count in 100 bees or 300 bees, depending on what you do. And then that'll be the real sign if you've got a mite problem or not. So other than that, after you extract the honey from your honey supers, you can store those away. And I could probably give a quick overview of what we do, but I'm not going to because I would just be guessing. I don't store our supers. But I thought that I would get a hold of my husband this weekend, sometime when we have a few minutes and we're together, and we would do a video on storing your boxes. They could be supers, they could be deeps, it could be any boxes that you're putting away for the winter, because we want to decrease the amount of space that the bees have to protect. So they're not bringing in honey and resources at this point. They've got a lot of resources in those frames on their deep boxes, especially if you're running 2 deeps. And so typically when we extract the honey, we don't put the boxes back at this point. You know, if we extract in June, sure, we put those supers back on and let them fill them back up. But right now, after we extract the honey, those supers get stored. And so I will get with Robert this weekend, and we will sit down and talk through what he does to store them. Different people have different systems. I know ideally, and I think in the near future, we'll have a storage container. That's it, a shipping container. He wants to get a shipping container, something that he can seal and he knows it's completely sealed, and then just have a bucket of the moth crystal solution in there that just keeps everything away. So, but we're not there yet. So we are still storing them in the workshop. We store them in trash bags, but we do use the moth crystals. And so again, we will do a video this weekend on that. So, I know a lot of you are like at home and you're new beekeepers and you've been home all year and you haven't had a chance to meet with us and come to meetings. And I get that this has been a hard year to be a first-year beekeeper, but I was talking to somebody this week and I said, if you have questions, send them to me. Text me, post them on here, tag me if you will, so that I can see it, because there's just so much going on Facebook that sometimes I don't get to see stuff. Tag me and we will try to answer it. If I can't answer it, I know who can, and I will find somebody who can. So if you've got questions about what's going on in your hive, what you need to do, questions like, should I be requeening now? Well, you could ask 3 or 4 different beekeepers that question, and you're going to get 3 or 4 different answers, maybe even 5. So, you know, some of that is just personal preference. We are not requeening. We're not splitting right now. We did requeen probably in June. I think we ordered about 10 queens. Some of them, the hives just had a really poor performing queen. Some of them, the queen disappeared. So it's just a personal preference. It just depends on what you want to do in your yard, in your hive. But it can be pretty expensive to requeen right now also. So that was one question. Splitting. Yes, there are people that split this time of the year, but it's going to require much more management on your part of the splits. And we just don't know. Remember last winter? I mean, we had freezes in November, and which was totally uncharacteristic. And that just complicates everything when we freeze that early, and the hives might not be, totally prepared and that kind of thing. So I can't tell you if we're going to split, but maybe we'll talk about that when we talk about storing supers over the winter with Robert. So if you have any questions, you can comment on this post and give me your questions. And when we get on this weekend, we can answer several questions if you have them. So, anyway, I hope you guys have had a great beekeeping year. Man, we have had a record-breaking year. We have way too much honey. I know that that's probably not possible to say, but boy, we've got a lot of honey. So yeah, crazy, a lot of honey. So anyway, it's been a great year for our family, for our yards. We did, when you start running a lot of bees and you have them spread out, you kind of have to call audibles sometimes. And we had bees out at a friend's house, and she called and said, hey, they're going to spray tomorrow. And my husband was, I don't know where he was. He was not at work. I mean, he was already home from work, but he had gone somewhere and he was coming home. And I said, hey, so-and-so called and they're going to spray tomorrow. And so he came home at like 7:30 and started getting ready and headed out to the yard and had to pack up all the bees and bring them home. So, you know, it looks all fun and shiny, but there's a lot of work involved with having as many hives as we have. And he's already told me, we're done. Like, we're at the max. We cannot add more. We can't add more yards. We can't add more hives. Like, he is maxed out, especially with our two laborers who went off to college on us. So anyway, it is fun. It's, you know, Eddie Collins talks about the most fun you're going to have is when you have 2 hives in your backyard. And you don't really appreciate that until you're running a lot of hives. And then you're like, man, 2 hives was a lot of fun, because it's not that much fun anymore. So, I mean, it is, but it's work. Like, it's just work. When you're running 65 hives, it's work. It's a little part-time job. So, extracting honey and, you know, bottling and selling and all that. I mean, it's a part-time job. So anyway, it's awesome. We love it, but it's work. So if you know anybody that wants to get involved with bees, we will be teaching classes. We'll start our classes in January. If you're interested in taking an advanced beekeeper class, we are talking about that. We've had a lot of people say, hey, are you going to do a follow-up to, you know, the basic beekeeping? And, you know, we could easily put together like a half-a-day class, especially since we've spent the whole year not being able to meet as a club. So, you know, if you're interested in that, comment on that too. So anyway, I hope that you learned something. Vitex Chaste Tree, that's one of our favorite trees, and Bone Set, and both. If you need some Bone Set, if you want to, you just message me and you can come dig some and put it in your yard. It has not gone to seed yet. It's still in bloom. If you can get it into a pot, put it where you want it to come up next year. Keep that pot relatively watered, and it will reseed in that same area for next year, and you'll have your own Bone Set coming up. So we've got tons of it. So anyway, those are 2 plants for you today. I hope you're enjoying this fantastic weather. The bees are, because they're out. They're loving it. Cooler temperatures, sun shining. It's pretty perfect. So anyway, this was Janelle Cole with Henderson County Beekeepers, and I just wanted to get on here and encourage you to keep keeping the bees and, to get out and see what's blooming. So my Esperanza is in full bloom. I don't know if they're working that yet. I will say African blue basil, boy, every time I walk by, it's covered in bees. So one of my favorites also. All right, you guys have a great day. Bye.